Hey VR shooters, has this ever happened to you? All right, I've had it. Being a live streamer, you know how hard it is to get gameplay footage when your aim is all over the place, when you can't hit crap? I wish I had something that was like reliable and it looks good and it's functional. Take a look at this bad boy. Check it out. I know, dope, right? Want to see what it looks like? Follow me. How's it going, troops? My name is Sigma6. I'm the host of this channel, and today we're going to be discussing one of my projects that I've been thinking about doing for the better part of the last year called the weapons bench. So what is the weapons bench? We're going to be talking about some of my one-of-a-kind gun stocks that I've been customizing over the last couple of years, ever since I've been sponsored with Kobra VR. If you're already a VR enthusiast, I'm pretty sure that you've already come across Kobra VR's products before when it comes down to looking for accessories for your controllers when you're using for first-person shooter products. Now, they cover everything from the Quest 2 down to the Quest 3, Quest Pro, and now also for the PSVR 2. Okay, now these aren't product review videos, not necessarily. If you are looking for some product review videos, you can always follow Brian's channel over at the Marisoc Review and How To channel. Now, his channel covers all these gun stocks that I'll be talking about in full detail, in full length, and a complete honest review, and talk about pros and cons of the gun stocks and what you're expecting to get from them when you buy them and how you receive them right out of the box. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I'll make sure I put his link to his channel in the description down below. And because he's a partner of mine, I would really appreciate it if you like to go out there and if you like and support the work that he does, if you will give him a follow and make sure you comment on his videos and make sure you hit those thumbs up. Roger? All right, so given the fact that this is a brand new channel and this is the first video that's going to be featured on that channel, we're going to be starting off with the biggest, most customizable, robust gun stock that I have in my armory. Today, we're going to be talking about the Kobra VR Maglock Pro controller. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So now that the panoramic videos are out of the way, now we get to start talking about some of the customizations that I have here on this platform. So this is all kitted out in all kind of different ways that you would normally be able to see from your stock controller that you would be able to buy from the website. If you want to see what the stock controller looks like, that stock controller will be linked right over here in this picture there. So aside from the stock controller, this thing is kitted all the way out. And we're going to get into all the little parts and pieces and the reason why I have them on my gun stock here in just a second. Now, for those who don't know, I'm a combat veteran. I served 8 years inside the United States Army, which 3 of those I spent with the 5th Special Forces Group out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And the last 5 years I spent with the 82nd Airborne Division. My MOS was a 92 Romeo, and I ended up getting medically discharged due to injuries that I've sustained while in conducting airborne operations. So most mods that we have on here are store-bought mods. So if you are in the market of closely coming down to making your gun stock look very similar to mine, I'll be more than happy to post those products also in the description. And there's a couple things that's on here that you won't be able to buy, unfortunately, because of the fact that I either 3D printed myself or I know somebody that ended up coming up with files that 3D printed them for me. So unfortunately, I won't be making any of those 3D prints for purchase, but there are plenty of other different ways that you can actually use, which I'll be talking about, that you'll be able to use instead of the products that I have. So without further ado, we're going to get this thing broken down a little bit further, and I'll be more than happy to show you everything else that we have on this rifle. All right, so some of the different flair that I have onto my buttstock is this little rubberized little keychain here. Now this is just purely for cosmetic. There's nothing really important about this piece. The reason why I have this piece here was because I had an M4 before it got upgraded to my M16 that most people will assume is a downgrade, but trust me, the one that I had was very kitted out, and it was very specific to my needs when I got it, when I became a designated marksman. So we had these little ribbons that we used to put on the back of our buttstocks when we used to put it inside of our lockers in our convoy shed, so that way we knew if the weapons were serviceable and when they weren't serviceable. So I ended up putting a little keychain banner here, which is supposed to be reminiscence of my of our little ribbons that we had on the back of our buttstocks when it was stored in our lockers. And because this little guy ended up coming with a little keychain charm that came along with it, I ended up keeping that on there as well. So the particular key brand is called Zombie Cat. It's very, very cheap. If you wanted to add that on there, you can find it on the Amazon store, and I think it's like $8. And in order for me to put it on, I ended up having this triangular buttstock, what we call the sling mount, and this is attached to the sling mount, which requires some finagling because I had to remove this pin out of the back side of this piece here and then loop it through, and then, you know, put that pin back through that rubberized plastic. And then how I have it secure so that way that the sling pin doesn't move back and forth, I have it zip tied to these holes here in the back of the buttstock, which leaves us with a solid red custom 3D printed mil-spec buffer tube. Now this buffer tube serves two purposes in the real world function. Now the first purpose is that there's normally a big giant coiled spring that sits inside of this buffer tube. The purpose of that spring is supposed to help redirect the recoil from the rifle. The spring is supposed to help absorb a lot of that shock from it being slammed into your shoulder, so that way it mitigates it, so that way it absorbs most of that recoil and pushes it away from your body, so you take very minimal amount of the recoil that the weapon platform is supposed to be able to dish out. The second function for the buffer tube is to allow all these different attachments for these buttstocks. Now these buttstocks come in a lot of different shapes and varieties and sizes, depending on the shooter's need and comfort. So now that that's out of the way, we can actually talk about this particular buttstock in general. Now this buttstock has these honeycomb cutouts on the side, which is supposed to also add to the aesthetic that you can see the buffer tube underneath, which in this case, with it being red, it shines through and it gives it like this aesthetic flair and pop. The second function that they have is because they remove a lot of the material from off of the buttstock, which makes it extremely light compared to ones that actually have all the parts and stuff filled into the gaps, which makes it heavier and again increases the overall weight of the rifle. Now this particular one that I have, it does lock in 4 different spots according to the spots underneath the buffer tube. So if I rotate the gunstock upwards, you can see along this rail there's all these different holes. On the holes allows to these pins that sit inside of the buttstock that allows the buttstock to get locked in place whenever you're sliding the buttstock back and forth to lock it in position. This right here being the lock pin that moves this lever here, which actually locks the buttstock in place when you're actually locking it back and forth, so that way the buttstock doesn't slide out whenever you're adjusting. So as soon as you adjust it and it locks in, this is like the safety mechanism that actually locks into place, making sure that buttstock doesn't slide or move or fall out of any one of those positions. Moving away from the buttstock of the gunstock here, we're going to be moving towards the front half, and we're only covering the fire hand side, which is the right hand side, and then we're going to reverse it, and then I'm going to show you the customizations of the things that are on the left hand side. The reason why I started off with this one is because there's more customizations on the right hand side compared to those of the flip hand side. So on this side, we're going to be moving to the canted iron sights, which is going to be a company that's called Focus Aim, and this is a 45-degree canted iron sights, which can be placed anywhere on the Picatinny rail system. They do fold in and outwards. By pushing this little lever on each side, they do lock into place, and they stay that way. Now on the rear hand side, it came with is the rear side aperture that you would normally see on the M16 or any other like carbine type weapon, that gives you the dual functionality. And I think this is one of the cooler aspects when it comes to this, because most aftermarket parts, if you're buying like a rear sight, would only come with one aperture. The one aperture that it typically comes with is the one with the smaller hole. The one with the smaller holes, ones that you typically use for firing at larger targets, or say targets further away, because it draws your eyesight narrow inside of this hole, which allows you to focus more so on further targets. It takes all the light that you would normally see and focus it down on one narrow spot. Now the problem is that when you're using it up close, you want to see as much as the target as you can. So if you actually flip that outwards, there's a wider aperture that allows you to shoot at close range targets. And not a lot of rear aperture sights come with dual functions or dual flipping aperture, or at least sights. So I actually like that portion for this particular gun sight. So moving forward outside of that, we do have a bracket for another mod, or all right, so moving forward outside of that, we do have a bracket for another quick sling point, and when I swap the weapon over, you'll be able to see that. And I'll talk about the sling points and their importance, not necessarily for the real world rifle, but I will talk about it namely within the gun stocks. It serves a very decent and very important purpose, and that's the reason why I have it there. Moving forward, we do have our gun charm mount, which has the Apex Predator 3D printed logo there. So aside from that, moving forward, we do have our halo sight here. This one is a green halo sight. The reason why they're called halo sights is because the aperture actually comes out in a circle, and it's not a crosshair that you would normally see on like sniper scopes. Hence the reason why, because it's a circle, it's called a halo sight. And I will be posting how that looks right over here. So aside with that being called a halo sight, this one is based off of a Nerf model for, a lot of people that got into the Nerf customization. And the reason why this one isn't a normal one or a real one is because as soon as I hit this little rear button here for the power, it actually turns on and you actually see the light for it. So with this thing being lit up, it's going to give away position in a matter of seconds. But the reason why I have it on this particular one is because I live stream. So having something that looks very cool on live stream draws in a lot of attention from viewers. Now, all these things that's on this gun stock, again, has absolutely no purpose besides making this thing heavier. So aside moving from that, we are going to be moving to our red dot sight. Now this red dot is typically the ones that you would normally see for pistols. Would not be one that you would actually put on a rifle mount, namely because this one sits right underneath the barrel of a pistol, and it's very small, it's very functional to the point to where it does have the windage and adjustment screws, and so you can adjust this. The problem is with it is that the fact that it's not suited for long range, and that's the reason why this one isn't necessarily a great thing to have on an actual real world rifle. But it serves a purpose for this particular gun stock for two reasons, namely because if the front sight is pulled down, if I had a full-size laser, it wouldn't be able to sit in the appropriate place where it needs to go. So I could move this maybe one spot forward, but then I wouldn't be able to put my front sight bracket all the way down into the lock position. So that's why it's towards the backhand side here, and it is a smaller version of the mount, but yes, it does work. So if I actually have the button turned on here, you can see the laser. So while doing that, I'll actually rotate my camera here, so that way you can actually see the laser shine through. And yes, it is a fully functional laser. These little brackets here, these are what we call rail mount covers. These are supposed to make sure that dirt don't get inside of them. They don't, fall on something and they start getting chipped up, and to the point to where your attachments don't fit into them perfectly or correctly. Picatinny rails are made out of metal. They normally sit or attach to the barrel itself or to a shroud of the barrel, which over time, especially in the Middle East, it got hot, like really hot, like 130 to 140 degrees hot. What we ended up doing is that they have these different rail mount covers, so that way you can have your hand on them without burning your hands. One of the cool things that I liked with this feature with the Gunstock, because of the fact that it's a larger Gunstock, allowed Falendor and Jay to get really creative with this Gunstock. So the first Gunstock of its kind, I actually have a big embossed engraving of the name of the Gunstock. So you have the feature Maglock Pro engraving here along the top of the Gunstock, which I did have a custom one, which on the opposite side said Alita, which was my rifle's name when I was engaged with the 5th Special Forces group when I was in Iraq. The backhand side here, you can see the backhand side of the tag for my ribbon that I have here along the side. Now this may or may not come with your Gunstock. Namely, the reason why I said this is because I took this one off of my Maglock Ultra, which is the smaller cousin to the Maglock Pro. This portion here is the fitted piece that sits along the aluminum that allows you to add for your one point sling. The reason why I took this one is because I modified my sling mount, and I'll show that here in the next couple of minutes when I get done talking about the side of the rifle. So that way I can have a modified for 3 different sling points. I have this bracket here, I have this middle one, and I have this end one. So if I wanted to upgrade from a single point sling, I could go from the 1 point sling, which I can put in any one of those 3 brackets, or I can put a 2 point sling, which is the sling that I ended up having. I have a modified, I guess you can say a modified 2 point sling. So normally if I had a larger one, I can have the one here in this sling bracket lug here, then I can put the front side here if I'm using a traditional 2 point sling, or because of the fact that I have a modified one, I use this position and this position here. So I can actually show you the reason why and how I did it here in just a sec. So this right here is the sling that comes with the Kobra VR with the modification that I am doing, and it's not like a huge modification, but if you opt out for a little bit more, you can get this 1 point sling, which actually has this little hook here at the end, and then the shroud that comes around, so that way that this doesn't come unhooked and fall out, and it protects the metal and your ring that you attach your point to. I've tried a lot of different 1 point slings that come from a lot of different companies, and normally these bungee sections here are really long because you're normally using them for actual real world rifles, which are really long, and they normally carry and they're supposed to support a lot of weight, so there's a lot of slack in them. But these ones are smaller, given that these Gunstocks aren't particularly very heavy, and so the way when it's actually slung, it sits exactly where it needs to be, so that way when you're taking this particular stock off, because it does have a removable pistol grip, so when you're taking this portion off and when you're attaching it, the importance about this is that you want this sling, your Gunstock, to sling in a certain position of your body every single time, so that way when you're trying to put your firing hand back onto the stock, you're in VR. You won't be able to see where you're attaching this magnet to. Now there is 2 magnets in this thing. There's one here in the front, there's one here at the top. And I want to say that the one here in the front, I want to say it's about an 80 to a 90 pound pull strength, and I want to say that the one here at the top might be a little bit weaker. So the good thing about it is, because of the fact that there's 2 magnets, it wants to gravitate towards the weapon itself. As long as you get to a close point, the magnets kind of feel the location where it needs to go. I got it and it just snaps in on its own. So that's one of the pros. But the thing is that when you typically do a tactical reload or a tactical swap, you're normally taking your rifle, your stock from the front, and then you're slinging it off, and then you're grabbing your sidearm and then drawing your sidearm. So if this thing is moving left and right, you're not going to be able to quickly attach your hand back to it, and you're going to be missing it. Now, for something that you have to do blindly because you can't see it, this is a little bit more than an inch in diameter. So trying to find an inch in a spot where you're technically blindfolded can be a problem. Hence the reason why my stock is, or say my sling, is modified. Now, it's not a huge modification. I have a releasable zip tie, and I have another one of my 3-point sling studs here, and I have my 1-point here. So the purpose that I ended up taking this bracket here, if you're ordering yours, I'm pretty sure you can request one from Kobra VR. They're very good at coming up with allowing for different customizations for the actual gun stock itself. I attach this ring to that, fold that back over, and now I take this portion and then I plug that into the sling mount. So now it's a modified 2-point sling. I have the opposite side for my halo sight. The halo sight, this right here, is the locking mechanism. You unscrew that, it basically allows you to move freely, or it controls like these brackets at the bottom that opens and then you just pop it off the top. On the front side of this rail, I have this bracket here that is a canted 45-degree angle small bracket mount that slides on top of the Picatinny route, allowing you to have a different attachment that's canted off to the side. You can see how this thing is canted at a 45-degree angle, namely because my hand is going to be here and my thumb is going to be sitting pretty level here. That means that this rifle light will be sitting right on top of my thumb. So this is a fully functional light. You push the button in all the way, it's going to normally set it off in 1 of 3 settings. This is its brightest form. Normally with a lot of these lights, you would have to turn completely off and turn it back on in order for the function to change, which you can do. I would say it's ill-advised for this particular light. This particular light came off of Etsy, not very expensive. It's normally used for like the Nerf series of guns. Again, going with the light, if I slightly push this in without having to turn it all the way off and turn it back on, and now changes it to the dense setting or the low setting. If I slightly push it again, it changes to the strobe setting. Now, another function that they have on this light, once I turn it back on, is this has an adjuster. So if you're walking down a hallway and something's further off in the distance, I can have this extend all the way out, which narrows the light. And if I bring it all the way back down, it widens the light. So this is a fully, functional, very cheap version of a 3-point laser, or like a 3-point flashlight. I will post the link to all the items that I have, at least the ones that are store-bought, in the description below. There we are, troops. Now that we have the logistics of all the mounted accessories that we have listed on our gun stock, now I believe that we should record this performance out in the field. What do you say?
Hello, Sigma. Initiating VR protocols.
All right, Sixers, there you have it. That's the end of the video. I apologize for how long this video actually took. With the rebranding of this channel and with the first video that I'm launching on it, I figured that the introduction was gravely needed. So the next Gunstock up for review is what the Maglock Pro eventually evolved into, the Maglock Ultra. If you guys want to check out that one, stay tuned for the next video. Until then, Sigma's got you 6. Over and out.